Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you'll step into a world of flowers, silk and silence. It's medieval India, a place of colour and faith and rules older than memory. You're not a princess or a saint. You're a little girl promised to a man you don't know, praised as pure and taught to disappear politely. This is what it meant to be a child bride, to live a full life before you were old enough to understand it. Before we start, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair plus other sleep tools in the description. Now, lie back. Get comfortable. Let's begin. You're 5 years old. Sitting on the floor, you draw circles in spilled rice while the adults talk in loops above your head. The grains are soft against your fingertips, smooth and cool, and you press them into tiny constellations that fall apart whenever someone walks too close. You can hear your father's voice, low, careful, and patient, as he speaks to the men sitting cross-legged on the mat. Every now and then they laugh, and the silver coins at their belts jingle like tiny bells. You don't know what they're saying, but their voices sound important, the kind that makes everyone else stay quiet. The room smells of cardamom and ghee mixed with the scents of sweat and wet earth drifting in through the open window. Outside, the afternoon heat hums with cicadas. Your mother sits near the doorway with the other women, her bangles clinking softly as she pours tea. Someone tells a joke and they laugh behind their veils, pretending not to listen to the men. You catch a flash of gold at your mother's neck when she leans forward to refill a cup. She looks tired but beautiful, like she's been waiting for something all day. You shift the rice into a new shape, a flower this time, and steal a piece of jaggery from the tray beside you. It sticks to your fingers and tastes like burnt honey. You don't notice one of the men watching you until he asks your father something in a kind voice. The others follow his gaze, smiling, and suddenly everyone seems to be talking about you. Your mother calls your name, gentle but warning, and you freeze with the candy still in your mouth. They ask you to stand, so you do, brushing rice from your skirt. A man you've never seen before crouches to your height and says you're clever for your age. His breath smells of beetle leaf, sweet and strange. He laughs when you look at him without answering, and he pats your head as though you were a pet. The grown-ups exchange glances that mean more than words. You go back to your spot on the floor, tracing the pattern of his sandals in the dust. Someone brings out a brass plate covered in flowers and sweets. You think it must be a festival day. There are so many colours, and the lamps are still lit, even though it's daytime. A priest arrives, humming a prayer under his breath. You know him from the temple. He always smells of ash and tulsi, and he smiles when he sees you, as if he's in on a secret you don't know. He ties a red thread around your wrist and tells you to keep it safe, that it's lucky. You nod, proud to be trusted with something holy. The men lean closer over the mat now. You hear the soft thump of coins being placed in a small pouch, the scrape of a reed pen writing on paper. Their words are too big to follow. Dowry, alliance, household, promise. You catch the word auspicious and try to remember what it means. One of the women giggles behind her hand. Another sighs like she's relieved. Your mother's smile looks tired. She strokes your hair without looking at you. The air feels thicker as the sun lowers. Someone closes the shutters halfway, and the light turns gold, the same colour as the turmeric paste drying on the edge of the bowl. You start to feel sleepy, lulled by the steady rhythm of adult talk. It sounds like rain, soft, endless, important. You stack the sweets into a small tower and imagine it's a palace. Maybe the strangers are kings. Maybe they'll invite you to live there. You don't notice when your father stands, or when he bows slightly to the older man across from him. You only look up when your name drifts through the air again, tied neatly to the word blessing. Everyone smiles, the priest nods. Your father presses his palms together and thanks the gods. A small bag of coins passes from one hand to another, quiet as a secret. The women murmur prayers of gratitude. You think it's because the prayers worked, that the gods liked your new rice flour, or that they're happy you shared your sweet. Your mother kneels beside you, her voice bright and trembling as she tells you to smile for the guests. You do, even though you're not sure why. The priest gives you another sweet, and you bite into it, feeling the sugar melt on your tongue. You hear laughter, gentle and proud. Someone calls you a lucky child. The adults talk faster now, folding the papers and tying them with red thread. You don't listen. You're thinking about how the evening smells of smoke and cooking lentils, how the sky outside is turning the colour of ripe plums. You wonder if there will be fireworks, like there were at the last wedding you saw from the rooftop. You remember the bride's hands painted red, her feet hidden in flowers, and how everyone said she looked like a goddess. You liked the drums and the songs. You told your mother you wanted to be a goddess too someday. She only smiled and told you to be patient. The grown-ups begin to stand. Feet shuffle, coins jingle again. Someone lights more lamps. The priest blesses the house, waving smoke in slow circles. You try to copy him with your hand until your mother pulls it gently down. The red thread around your wrist glows in the firelight, bright as a ribbon. You feel proud of it, though you don't know that it means you're officially betrothed. 4 years pass. You are 9 now. The time has come. Your wedding day is tomorrow. The older women of your house tell you to sit on a low wooden stool, and they call you Little Goddess. Someone warms water over the hearth until steam curls like pale snakes, and another crushes turmeric with a stone, turning it into a paste the colour of afternoon sun. You watch the bowl change while they laugh over your head, bracelets chiming against each other. A cousin dips her finger in the paste and dots your nose, and everyone clucks at her for wasting luck, but they're smiling while they scold. So you smile too, and try not to move. They begin with your hands. A palm holds your wrist steady, while a flat, careful thumb spreads the paste along your skin. And it is warm and a little scratchy, and it smells of earth after rain. You want to lick it to see if it tastes like the roots you chew in the monsoon, but someone taps your chin and says, "Eyes here," and you stare at the lamp flame until it dances into 2 flames and then back into 1. The paste makes your skin slippery, and the women murmur about how easily it shines, as if light is something you can polish like brass. When they lift your braid and sweep the mixture along your neck, the tiny hairs there stand up like grass after a breeze. You shiver. Later they pour warm water over your shoulders from a brass lota, and it runs down your back in streaming fingers. You hear the water hit the floor and collect in a round puddle that creeps toward your toes. Aunties say words you only half know, cleanse, auspicious, spotless, and one of them repeats a proverb about how a bride should shine brighter than the morning star. You picture a star wobbling in your palm and wonder whether stars are hot to hold, and while you're wondering, they rub scented oil into your hair, slow and sure, until the air smells of jasmine and coconuts and the sharp happiness of limes. They place a mirror in front of you, small with a crack at the corner, like a lightning line, and ask what you see. You say you see yourself because that is true, but they want more than true. They want the right answer, and someone whispers it into your ear, pure. They tell you purity is softness and silence, and steady eyes, and you hold your eyes very still because you're good at games. When you wobble a little, the mirror shivers in the light, and your face breaks into 4 faces and then becomes 1 again, and you think perhaps purity is staying one thing even when the light moves. After the washing comes the teaching. The older women sit you on the mat with your knees tucked neatly to the side, and they fold your hands in your lap, as if hands were clothes that wrinkle. They say a wife is gentle and tidy, that she steps like a cat and speaks like a song at dusk. They show you how to lower your eyes just enough to be polite, but not so much that you cannot see the floor. They practice greetings with you, and praise rises when you get the tilt of your head right, the one that says welcome and apology at the same time. You wonder how a neck can say so many things, and you practice until your neck aches. Between lessons, someone feeds you sweet rice with cardamom, and you lick the spoon because you forgot you're supposed to be careful. And they laugh, but then they say, "No more of that, you're a bride." And the word bride feels like a new pair of shoes, too pretty, too tight, and ready to make a blister. You ask if brides can climb the neem tree if their skirt is not too heavy, and the room smiles toward the floor. An aunt says, climbing is for boys, and another says, clever girls don't need height to see. And your mother puts a hand on your head that is light but firm, like a lid on a pot. You nod because nodding is easier than questions. They thread flowers for your hair while they talk of things that taste like salt and secrets. How to keep a house, when to speak, when not to eat the first bite, how to fold a sari so it falls like water. The jasmine chain grows longer and heavier in their hands, and when they loop it over your braid, it feels like a tame snake resting where it is told. Next, they paint your palms with a thin wash of more turmeric and trace tiny circles around your wrists, singing a song that sounds like water on stones. The song has lines about rivers and brides, and the moon seeing everything, and someone nudges your elbow so you will hum along. You do, even though you don't know if the moon approves of girls who forget to keep their knees together. The aunties tell you stories about brides who are so patient that time itself slowed down to watch them, and you want to ask whether patience makes time kinder or just longer, but your mouth is busy humming, and it feels rude to catch a question in the middle of a song. The paste dries in patches. Where it dries, your skin tightens into a shell that crackles when you smile too wide. They say not to smile too wide because teeth are a private brightness and should not be thrown around the room like coins. They tell you laughter is fine if it is soft and brief, like a bell that rings once and then remembers itself. You try to ring like that. It is a difficult ring, like balancing a cup on your head while the floor tilts. Each time you manage it, nods travel around the room like a small breeze, and pride warms your chest. And then the pride scares you because you do not know if brides are allowed to feel it. Your mother brings out a small wooden box with a crack in the lid, and inside are bangles you have seen but never worn. She slides them on, one by one, oil making them slip easily over your knuckles. They sit against your skin with a coolness that feels like rain shadows. When you turn your wrist, they answer with a sound like tiny rivers, and you think perhaps the rivers in the song have been living in your mother's box all along. She does not speak while she dresses you, and you do not either, and between the two silences, something important passes, too quiet for words and too large for the room. The day thins into evening, and shadows gather under furniture. The women wipe the floor and collect the damp cloths, and someone scatters more incense into the lamp, so the smoke makes curls you want to poke with your finger. The red thread from the priest is still around your wrist, worn every day since it was placed there. It's stained yellow where the paste touched it, and you wonder if the gods will mind the colour change. An aunt says again that you are pure, and another says again that purity is a kind of light, and you look down at your arms and see only yellow and tiny hairs pressed into the paste, like trapped grass. When night finally stretches itself across the courtyard, they lay a clean sheet on your sleeping mat and tell you to lie still so the turmeric does not smear. You obey because the day has been long and because obedience is now a habit worn smooth. The room is quiet, and the lamp makes a small circle on the wall where a moth keeps finding and losing the flame. Your skin feels tight everywhere the paste has dried, and where it hasn't, it feels slippery, and you can't decide which feeling belongs to pure. You wonder if pure means good, and whether good means you will be loved even when the yellow fades and the oil smell goes away. Eventually, you drift off to sleep. Morning bursts open with sound before light. The drums begin while the sky is still pale, their deep, round thud shaking dust from the beams of the house. Someone calls your name from far away. Another voice tells you to hurry, and then hands lift you from the mat before you're properly awake. The room smells of ghee lamps and damp flowers, and every corner is alive with motion. Women tying garlands, men arranging trays of offerings, children chasing each other until an elder claps his hands and sends them scattering. You rub your eyes and everything blurs into red and gold, too bright to hold still. The older women wash your face with rose water and dab your cheeks with sandalwood until your skin tingles. You see your reflection in a copper mirror, hair slicked with oil, eyes rimmed in kohl, lips stained with something sweet that tastes of sugar and cloves. A veil of red silk waits on the cot beside you, heavy as water. When they drape it over your head, the world changes colour. Everything seen through a thin red haze like the inside of a pomegranate. The air thickens with chanting. Men carry trays of fruit, coconuts, folded leaves filled with rice. Somewhere beyond the courtyard, the priest's voice rises and falls, steady as breathing. You can't see him yet, but you can smell the smoke of his fire, sharp and grassy. Outside, the drums grow louder, joined by pipes that wail like birds calling across a river. The music fills the house until it becomes part of the air itself. You want to ask if this is what joy sounds like, but your mouth is busy being powdered and painted. And every time you try to speak, another hand tilts your chin or presses a flower behind your ear. When they lift you to your feet, the silk clings to your knees. You stumble, and they laugh softly, telling you not to cry, not to wrinkle your face before the gods see it. You are guided through the doorway into sunlight that flashes off brass and glass, dazzling after the dim house. The courtyard is packed with people, neighbours, cousins, men in white, women in jewel-coloured saris that ripple like fish scales. Someone throws petals, and they land on your shoulders and stick to your oiled hair. You can smell every flower, jasmine, marigold, lotus, each fighting to be the strongest. Children climb the wall to see better, shouting until the drummer answers with a quick roll that makes them squeal. At the gate, your mother waits with a brass plate of water and lamp flame. She circles it around your face, her bracelets clinking in time with the chant on her lips. For a moment, her eyes meet yours. There is pride there, and something you don't have a name for, like the moment before rain, when the air tastes heavy and still. You want to reach out to her, but your hands are full of flowers, and the women behind you are urging you forward. She touches your forehead with ash, a blessing and a goodbye, and you step past her into the crowd. The noise swells as you're carried toward the mandap, the decorated canopy that waits like a small temple. Its posts are wrapped in fresh leaves, and from the beams hang strings of mango and betel that tremble in the breeze. The priest is already seated beside the fire pit, his voice rising through the smoke. You notice the flames first. They move like living things, bending and leaping. But then you see the man sitting on the other side. He wears white and a garland of flowers that hides half his face. He doesn't look at you. The crowd quiets as you approach. Someone whispers that he is your husband, and you try to memorize him quickly before the next thing happens. His hands are darker than yours, his feet bare, a ring glinting at one finger. He sits very straight like a statue, and when the priest gestures for him to stand, he does so without sound. The women position you across from him. You can feel everyone's eyes pressing against your back. The priest sprinkles water into the fire, and it hisses. He begins to chant faster now, his words tumbling into one another until they lose shape. You hear fragments, long life, harmony, prosperity, but they slide past without meaning. Someone tells you to hold out your hands, You do, and the priest pours rice into your palms. It spills between your fingers like sand. He ties a small thread around your wrist and another around your husband's, then knots them together with a twist of grass. The thread is rough and smells faintly of smoke. The crowd murmurs approval. Drums answer the priest's rhythm, dull and deep. The sound makes your chest flutter, like when you run too far and can't quite catch your breath. You are told to walk around the fire, so you do, the silk of your veil brushing against his arm each time you pass. The world tilts between heat and colour and noise. You count the steps because counting is something you can hold on to. 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you lose track, you start again. The smoke catches in your throat and makes your eyes water, but everyone is smiling. So you smile too. Someone throws more petals. They stick to your skin like soft ashes. The priest lifts your right hand and places it into the man's. His palm is dry and warm. He doesn't squeeze, but he doesn't let go. You look at your joined hands through the shimmer of heat, and for a moment it feels like the air itself has knotted them. The priest says more words you don't understand, and the rhythm of his voice begins to sound like the drums again. Steady, endless. The spectators lean forward. You can feel them holding their breath. He gestures for you to repeat after him. You try, stumbling over syllables that feel foreign. The words are long, full of sounds that stick to your tongue, but the priest nods as if he heard them correctly. The man across from you repeats too, his voice low and even. It sounds older than it should. The priest smiles, satisfied, and takes the ends of your garments, your red veil, his white scarf, and ties them together with a firm, practiced motion. The knot is small, quick, but it pulls the fabric tight enough that you can feel it against your shoulder. The crowd erupts in cheer. Drums thunder again, and conch shells blow until your ears ring. Women ululate, children shout. Petals rain down in a blur of gold and orange. You blink, and the world swims. The knot between you tugs when he shifts slightly, and you realise you're not free to move without him. People press closer, congratulating, laughing, touching your hands as if you're something newly made. You try to remember if you're supposed to thank them, but the priest's chant drowns every thought. You catch one last glimpse of your mother beyond the garlands. She's smiling now, the careful kind of smile used for guests. The drums beat faster, the priest lifts his hands to the fire. You echo his final chant, your voice small and hoarse. The man beside you echoes it too, his words steady. When the noise peaks, the priest raises the tied cloth high enough for all to see, the knot gleaming with sweat and ash. You don't know what it means, only that everyone is watching, and that the pull of the fabric feels both light and impossible to break. You repeat the last words he gives you, simple syllables lost beneath the cheering, and as the smoke rises toward the open sky, you stand very still, your hands still in his, your breath full of incense and heat, and the knot binding you quietly between them. The next morning the sky is pale and cloudless, and the courtyard glows with marigolds strung in loops from one pillar to another. You sit beside your mother as the women finish packing the last of the gifts. Brass pots, folded cloth, and trays of sweets covered with muslin. Everyone moves quickly, as if afraid the sun will catch them unprepared. Your mother's eyes are swollen from crying, though she smiles whenever someone looks her way. The priest chants somewhere behind you, his voice low and constant, like the drone of bees near water. The words mean little to you, but their rhythm makes your stomach ache. You watch the smoke rise from his small clay bowl and curl above the garlands. The older women hum along, their voices soft and cracked, and the melody twists through the air, like thread being pulled tight. Someone ties a small pouch to your wrist, filled with rice and turmeric, and tells you it will keep you safe on your journey. You want to ask what you're being kept safe from, but the words stay caught behind your teeth. Your mother kneels in front of you, smoothing the folds of your sari. Her hands smell of camphor and salt. Remember to keep yourself fed, she says, then adds quickly, if they let you. Her voice breaks on the last word, and she hides it by kissing your forehead. The mark of vermilion she leaves there feels hot, as if it might burn through your skin. Around you, the others pretend not to watch. Their eyes are kind but careful, like people afraid to touch something fragile. A conch shell sounds from the gate, long and hollow. The men outside call for the palanquin, and you see it waiting in the sunlight, painted red, trimmed with faded gold. The air shivers with motion. Servants lifting bundles, a cousin scattering petals, the oxen snorting in their yokes. The noise makes you dizzy. Someone takes your hand, an aunt maybe, and guides you toward the steps. Your mother follows, one hand over her mouth. When you turn to look at her, she nods and tries to smile, but tears slip from under her fingers and stain her sari. They help you climb into the palanquin. The cushions are soft and smell faintly of ghee and sandalwood. The red curtain is drawn across the entrance, dimming the world into a quiet shade of amber. You can still hear the people outside, their voices broken by drum beats and the shrill notes of a reed flute. The priest's chant continues, joined by women singing an old farewell song about rivers and daughters. You recognize the melody. Your mother used to hum it while grinding grain. The sound of it makes your chest feel heavy, like swallowing something too big. The poles lift and the palanquin sways. For a moment you think the ground has turned into water. The rhythm of footsteps begins, steady and unhurried, and the songs fade behind you until they are only faint echoes wrapped around the drum. You peek through a gap in the curtain and see the road unfolding ahead. Brown dust, green fields, the occasional flicker of a white cow grazing. The air tastes different already, less sweet, full of the smell of earth warming under the sun. You lean back against the cushion, still holding the edge of your sari, where your mother's tears have darkened the cloth. The motion rocks you like the swing in the courtyard used to, and the sound of the poles creaking becomes almost comforting. Each sway feels the same, gentle and endless, and your eyes grow heavy. You think about the kitchen where the rice used to bubble, the neem tree that bent toward your window, the way your mother's anklet sounded when she walked across the floor at night. You tell yourself you'll see them all again soon, that this is just temporary. You find the rhythm of the palanquin is oddly relaxing. The curtains flicker with light as the sun climbs higher, and somewhere far behind you, the conch shell sounds again, softer this time. The path turns and the voices of home vanish completely. You close your eyes and let the movement cradle you. The world sways, warm and dark and full of the smell of flowers left behind. Eventually, the road ends at a gate tall enough to swallow the sky. The palanquin stops, and for a moment, everything is still except the buzzing of flies and the creak of bamboo poles. Someone outside shouts and the curtain is drawn aside. Bright light floods in, burning away the red shadow that had become your world. You blink until the blur sharpens into the shape of a courtyard. Wide, sunlit, surrounded by walls too high to see beyond. A woman you don't know leans forward and says, "Welcome, little mistress." Her voice is sweet, but her eyes move past you as if checking a list. Hands help you down. Too many of them, all careful and practiced. The ground feels harder than it should. Your legs wobble as if you've forgotten how to stand. More women gather around, each introducing themselves without waiting for you to remember their names. They smell of ash and beetle and the starch of washed saris. One lifts your veil to see your face, another adjusts your bangles. One laughs softly and says, "Our new moon has arrived." You try to smile because that seems expected, but the smile wavers and slips away. The courtyard is full of noise, oxen groaning somewhere beyond the gate, pots clanging in the kitchen, children shouting and being hushed. You look for your husband among the bustle, but he's already stepping inside, surrounded by older men. You catch a glimpse of his back, the white of his robe bright against the dark hallway, and then he disappears. Someone tells you not to worry. Husbands are busy with matters you wouldn't understand. You nod, though you have nothing to compare that to. They lead you through a series of corridors that all smell of smoke and old stone. Every doorway looks the same. Every turn leads deeper in. At last, you reach a small room with low windows covered in latticework. The floor is clean and cool under your bare feet. A clay lamp waits in one corner, unlit. One of the women gestures toward a folded mat and says, "This will be yours." She tells you to rest, but before she leaves, she reminds you to keep your eyes down when men pass by, and to always cover your head, even indoors. Her tone is kind, but the words sound like the closing of a door. Later, a servant brings you food, rice, lentils, a small bowl of curd, and tells you to eat quietly. She sits across the threshold and watches to make sure you finish. The rice sticks to your fingers. The curd is sour. You think of your mother's kitchen, of how she used to hum while stirring the pot, and you swallow quickly so you won't cry in front of this stranger. When you hand back the bowl, the servant smiles faintly and says, "You'll learn soon." You don't ask what she means. By afternoon, another woman arrives, older, tall, wrapped in layers of pale cotton. She introduces herself as the mistress of the house, your husband's mother. Her presence pulls the air tight around you. She doesn't sit. She stands with her hands clasped and tells you the rules. You must rise before dawn to light the lamps, sweep the courtyard, and greet the elders. You must not eat until everyone else has finished. You must not speak loudly or laugh in the presence of men. When guests arrive, you are to serve them water, but not join their conversation. "A wife's grace is in her silence," she says, her voice steady as the tick of a clock. You nod because the words feel heavy, and nodding keeps them from falling. When she leaves, the younger women fill the space with whispers. They tell you which servant is lazy, which uncle forgets his shoes, which days are lucky for fasting. You listen, smiling when they do, trying to memorize the rhythm of this house, where everyone seems to already know the steps. They ask about your family, your village, the number of goats your father owns. You answer as best you can, but every word feels borrowed, as if your voice belongs to someone else now. In the evening, you're told to join the women in the kitchen. The room is hot and cramped, its ceiling low and blackened from years of smoke. You help grind the spices, careful not to spill. The stone makes your palms rough, but no one scolds you, and that feels like a victory. The older cook teaches you how to stir the pot clockwise, not counterclockwise, and you don't ask why, you just do it. The air fills with the smell of onions and cumin, a smell that almost makes you hungry. When the food is ready, the women carry the pots to the main hall, while you follow behind, silent, invisible, exactly as instructed. After dinner, when the plates are cleared and the last lamp is dimmed, you're sent back to your room. The corridor hums with crickets, and somewhere outside a bullock cart creaks along the road. You can still taste the spices on your tongue. The servant who brings you water tells you the door will be latched from the outside. Not locked, but it sounds the same. She wishes you good night and leaves. The sound of her footsteps fades until there's only the slow breathing of the house settling into darkness. You sit on the mat and untie your bangles. The red marks they leave around your wrists look like bracelets made of skin. You trace them with your finger until they fade. The lamp burns low, its flame flickering as if uncertain whether to stay. You lie down, the mat hard beneath your back, and pull the end of your sari over your face the way your mother used to tuck you in. The room smells of clay and dust and oil. You whisper your mother's name very softly, as if it might float out through the lattice and find her. But only the silence answers, patient, steady, and permanent. Seasons change, and the courtyard teaches you the rhythm of the house better than any voice. When the neem tree begins to shed its yellow leaves, you know it is time to sweep before dawn. When the air smells of wet clay, You know the monsoon is near, and that the walls will darken with moisture. You grow taller, and your clothes no longer reach your ankles, but no one seems to notice until your mother-in-law sighs and instructs a servant to lengthen the hems. You carry water, clean brass plates until they glow, and learn the pattern of when each lamp must be lit. The servants call you little mistress, though their eyes say otherwise. You're too young to rule them and too old to be one of them. The days arrive and leave without shape. Morning begins with the sound of a broom against stone, the scrape of a pot lid, the whisper of feet. You rise before the others, wash your face, and tie your braid as you were taught. The world beyond the gate continues, oxen bellowing, traders shouting, the thump of grain sacks, but it feels far away, like a story half remembered. Sometimes a sparrow hops inside the lattice of your window, leaving dust from its wings on the sill, and that small trace feels like a secret gift. You wipe it away before anyone notices. When you finish your chores, you sit in the women's quarters, mending or grinding or waiting for instructions. The air there is always thick with the smell of turmeric and smoke. The older women talk about births, illnesses, and bargains at the market. Their words pass over you like warm wind. You listen without joining in. If you laugh at the wrong moment, they glance at you as if reminded that you're not one of them. You learn to keep your laughter inside. Your mother-in-law calls you to her side often. She says a good wife learns with her eyes, not her tongue. So you watch her manage the house. How she nods at the servants without raising her voice. How she arranges offerings before the household shrine. How she speaks to her husband in tones so even they sound like prayers. You copy her gestures when no one's watching, folding your hands the same way, keeping your back straight even when you ache to rest. She never praises you, but she also never corrects you twice, and that small silence feels almost like approval. You begin to mark time by festival rather than season. On holy days, the courtyard fills with colour, and visitors bring sweets wrapped in leaves. You're allowed to help decorate the threshold with chalk designs, and the moment you finish one pattern, a child runs through it and smears it into dust. You don't mind. You've learned that nothing in this house stays as it is for long. The chalk washes away in the next rain, and the courtyard returns to its usual quiet, leaving no proof of celebration except the faint scent of burned wicks. Letters sometimes arrive from your family. The first one makes your hand shake. It's written by your mother, but signed with your father's name. She asks if you're eating well and reminds you to be obedient. She writes that the house feels emptier without your laughter, though you know she means to comfort you, not herself. You read it until the ink begins to blur, and when your mother-in-law takes it away to store with the household papers, you don't ask for it back. Later letters come less often. They grow shorter, more formal, and eventually they stop coming at all. The courtyard becomes your world. You know the pattern of its shadows by heart. In the morning, they lie long and cool across the stone. By noon, they shrink to thin black lines. By evening, they climb the walls like vines. You sweep the same corners until the bristles of the broom thin to threads. When rain falls, the smell of wet earth fills you with a sudden, aching happiness, and you almost run outside. Then you remember the rule about not stepping into the open air without permission, and the feeling folds back into your chest. You press your hands together and whisper a small prayer instead, though you're not sure to whom. Sometimes you catch sight of your husband in the hall. He walks quickly, always accompanied by someone older, always looking ahead. When he does look at you, he nods politely, as if you are a servant he recognizes but cannot name. You lower your eyes as you were taught. His absence is easier to manage than his presence. At least when he's gone, you don't have to remember what to do with your hands. At night, after the lamps are dimmed, you sit on your mat and trace patterns in the dust with your finger. Flowers, stars, tiny spirals. They vanish as quickly as they appear, but drawing them feels like breathing. You used to hum while you did it, little songs your mother taught you, but the walls make your voice sound strange, so you hum only inside your throat now. The servants sometimes pass by your door. If they hear movement, they think you're working late and leave you alone. The quiet becomes its own kind of comfort. You grow taller still, and the women begin to notice. They tell you to keep your veil lower, to walk with smaller steps, to stay inside when visitors come. They say a young wife must protect her modesty as carefully as a lamp protects its flame. You listen without protest. It feels easier to obey than to imagine what might happen if you didn't. The outer courtyard becomes forbidden ground, and the world shrinks to rooms connected by narrow corridors. When you walk between them, your anklets sound too loud, so you learn to step lightly until even your own movement disappears. One afternoon, while helping in the kitchen, you spill a handful of lentils. They scatter across the floor like small beads. You drop to your knees to gather them, and a servant laughs, saying, "Still a child." The words sting, though her tone is kind. Later, you sit in your room staring at your doll, the one you've kept hidden behind a folded shawl. It's made of rags and straw, its painted face rubbed smooth from years of being held. You tell yourself it's foolish to keep it, but you can't make your hands move. When you finally go to the courtyard, you leave it where it is. The next day, the room feels emptier. The shawl lies flat and the doll is gone. You ask a servant if she's seen it, and she shrugs, saying, "Perhaps it was thrown out with the rubbish." You nod, as though it doesn't matter, as though you understand the logic of the house that decides what is childish and what is sacred. Days turn to weeks, and the house begins to treat you differently, though no one says why. The air in the women's quarters grows thicker, the glances longer, the questions softer and harder to answer. You wake each morning to the same pale light spilling through the lattice, the same smell of ash and ghee from the courtyard lamps. But something inside you feels shifted, like a small weight added that no one else can see. You sweep, grind, cook, serve, just as before, but the world seems louder in its stillness, as though every sound has been waiting for you to notice it. Then one morning, it happens. You feel the ache first, dull, low, constant, as you kneel to wash the floor. When you rise, dizzy from the heat, there is a stain on the cloth beneath you, dark and startling against the pale cotton. You stare at it, unable to move. It looks like a mistake, something broken, and before you can hide it, one of the servants sees. She gasps softly, then smiles with relief, as though a prayer has been answered. She tells you to stay still, her voice quick and full of pride. Within minutes, the whole household knows. The news spreads faster than you can understand it. The older women come first, whispering blessings, their faces bright with satisfaction. Your mother-in-law arrives soon after, carrying a brass bowl of water and flowers. "The gods have favoured you," she says, and presses her hand to your head. Her fingers leave the scent of sandalwood and something faintly sour. You stand there, dizzy, your palms sticky with sweat, while she tells the others to prepare offerings for the family shrine. The words blur together: auspicious, fertile, blessed. The servant wipes the floor clean and burns incense over the spot, as though to sanctify it. They lead you to your room and tell you to sit on the mat while they bring you food. Someone hands you a sweet made from jaggery and coconut, and you chew obediently, though the sugar burns your throat. The older women hum low songs about daughters and mothers, about rivers that never run dry. You recognize the rhythm, but not the meaning. When one of them says, "Now the house is complete," the others nod, and their smiles carry the same soft pity they used to give you when you were smaller. For the next 3 days, you're told to stay apart. It is not punishment, they assure you, but respect. A mat is placed in a corner near the window, and your food is served there in small brass bowls. You're not to touch the household idols, not to enter the kitchen, not to cross the threshold of the prayer room. You are to rest, to cleanse, to wait until the time passes. The rules sound familiar, yet they taste strange now that they belong to you. You obey them because you cannot imagine doing otherwise. When you bathe each morning, the water stains faintly pink before turning clear again. The smell of iron fills the air, and you hold your breath so you won't taste it. You think of the turmeric baths and the laughter that once filled the courtyard, of how the women's voices used to rise like birds. This silence feels different, thicker, heavier. You want to ask why the same thing that made them whisper blessings now makes them avoid your touch, but the question dies before it reaches your tongue. You wash until your skin prickles and your fingertips wrinkle, and when you finish, the servant waiting outside hands you a towel without looking at your face. At night, the pain comes in waves. It crawls through your body, hot and dull, and you curl around it like a secret. The lamps flicker in the corridor, and their light glows through the lattice in narrow stripes. Somewhere beyond the wall, you can hear the others laughing quietly after dinner, their voices muffled by the stone. You press your hands to your stomach and try to listen for something else. Your heartbeat, the sound of your breath, but all you hear is the faint trickle of water from the courtyard. Fountain, constant and indifferent. On the fourth morning, the house opens to you again. Your mother-in-law brings new clothes, pale yellow cotton that smells of sun. She helps you dress and marks your forehead with red powder. "You are a woman now," she says. "The gods will watch over you." The phrase is meant to comfort, but her tone feels like a closing door. She leads you to the household shrine, where the priest waits, smiling. He blesses you with holy water, murmuring words about the cycle of creation, about how a woman's body carries the promise of life. The drops fall cool on your skin, and you shiver. That evening, a small feast is held in your honour. The women gather around you, singing old songs about first womanhood, about rivers and fertility and duty. They feed you sweet rice and tell you to eat until you're full. Your husband appears briefly, standing at the edge of the courtyard, nodding politely before leaving again. The others sigh and say it's a good sign, that he respects the ritual. You smile because they expect you to, though you cannot feel your face. The lamps burn brighter than usual, and their smoke curls into the rafters like slow-moving ghosts. When the feast ends, they leave you alone to rest. The courtyard is quiet except for the sound of crickets and the soft clatter of dishes being washed. You sit by the window, looking at the slice of moon, caught in the lattice, the sky's deep blue, nearly black, and the stars shimmer, like small eyes watching. You try to feel proud the way they told you to. You whisper the words they used, pure, complete, blessed, but they sound unfamiliar now, as if they belong to another girl. Outside, the lamps are being put out one by one. The smell of burnt wicks lingers in the air, faint and sweet. You listen to the footsteps fading down the corridor and close your eyes waiting for sleep. The last thought that drifts through your mind before the dark takes it away is how strange it feels that the same people who praised your purity now rejoice in its loss, and how easily holiness can change its shape when the world decides it must. Now that you're officially a woman, the house feels different. You wake to the sound of water being poured, fabric rustling, doors opening and closing. Someone tells you not to move. When you sit up, your sari is already laid out across the foot of your mat, red and gold, the colour that makes everyone call you beautiful, whether you want them to or not. A woman you do not know hums as she combs your hair. Her hands are quick, practiced, and careful not to meet your eyes. They bathe you again, as they did when you were 9, and the water is warm and smells of camphor. This time, they do not laugh. They do not call you little goddess. They move quietly, speaking only when necessary. The turmeric they smooth across your skin feels thicker now, sticky instead of soft. Someone says it will make you glow. You wonder if light hurts when it has nowhere to go. Your mother-in-law enters while they work. She nods at your veil and tells the women to tighten it, to make sure no one sees your face until the time is right. You stare at the floor as she circles you, inspecting the folds of your sari, the neatness of your braid, the steady way you sit. She touches your shoulder once and says, "Tonight you become a wife." Her voice carries neither warmth nor warning. It is the tone used for daily prayers, words that must be spoken because silence would be improper. When she leaves, the other women avoid your gaze. You're not told where your husband has been all day, but you hear his footsteps in the outer corridor, slow, measured, heavier than you remember. The sound stops outside the door, and the women fall still. One adjusts the chain of bells around your ankles, another lights the lamps, another presses a dot of sandalwood paste between your eyebrows. The priest's voice murmurs somewhere in the courtyard, chanting the same verses you've heard since childhood. The rhythm of it seems to pull at your breath, making you smaller with every repetition. They lead you to the inner room. The air there is thick with ghee smoke and jasmine, so sweet it stings the back of your throat. The floor has been sprinkled with flowers that stick to your bare feet. A small fire flickers in a brass bowl near the window, casting orange light that moves like water across the walls. The women arrange you on the mat, sitting upright with your hands in your lap, and tell you to wait. They say you must not speak unless spoken to, that you must not cry, that you must do what is asked because this is how love begins. You want to ask if love always starts with rules, but the question never reaches your lips. When the door closes, the sound of the latch feels louder than it should. You stare at the curtain that separates the two rooms. Shadows move behind it, blurred and uncertain. The lamps hum softly, the ghee in their bowls quivering. You can hear your own pulse in your ears, steady and loud. You think of your doll, of the spot of empty floor where it once lay, and for a moment you imagine yourself small enough to hide there again. The curtain stirs. He enters without a word. The sound of his bracelets, tiny gold links you've only seen from a distance, fills the quiet. He walks slowly, as if testing each step. You keep your eyes down, because that is what you've been taught. The smell of sandalwood clings to his clothes. You feel the air shift when he stops in front of you. He says your name once, carefully, as if testing it for weight. You answer softly, the way your mother-in-law told you to. Yes. There is movement, the faint brush of fabric, the rustle of his sleeve against your shoulder. The bells at your ankles chime once when you flinch, and you hold your breath so they will not do it again. You remember the instructions. Be still, be quiet, be obedient, and you cling to them like rope. The fire crackles, a sound so small it feels cruel. He speaks again. Words you cannot follow, and then the veil is lifted. The air touches your face for the first time in hours, heavy and warm. You close your eyes. Somewhere beyond the walls, the courtyard fountain drips, steady as a clock. The scent of the lamps grows thicker, mixing with the smell of sweat and flowers, and something metallic you cannot name. The noise of your own breathing fills the space where the chanting used to be. You keep your hands folded as long as you can, until he takes them and places them somewhere else. You stare at the patterned fabric beneath you, at the gold thread glinting in the firelight, and focus on counting the stitches. When you lose track, you start over. The heat builds until the air feels solid. You try to imagine the road outside, the fields beyond the gate, the sound of monsoon rain on stone. You think of your mother's voice singing the river song, the one that always ended with the word return, though you can't remember what came before it. You whisper it once under your breath, but it sounds wrong in this room. The lamps hiss softly, their flames bowing low before straightening again. When it is over, the room feels smaller. The fire has burned low and the jasmine petals are brown at the edges. You do not move until he does. He stands, adjusts his robe, and leaves without looking back. The door closes behind him with a soft thud that feels like the final line of a prayer. You stay where you are, legs folded, hands still in your lap, the veil tangled somewhere near your feet. The smell of ghee lamps clings to everything. The mat, your skin, your hair. Outside, the wind shifts through the courtyard, carrying the faint sound of a temple bell. It rings once, twice, and then stops. The echo lingers, stretching into silence. You stare at the dying fire until its light fades, until the shadows return to their places. The months that follow pass in a blur of whispers and watchfulness. Your body grows heavier, slower, full of strange aches that no one explains. The older women tell you it is a blessing. That pain is proof of life, that you should eat more rice and rest your feet. Servants bring you milk sweetened with jaggery and herbs that taste of metal. You drink because you're told to. You sleep because they say it is good for the child. Every morning your mother-in-law presses her palm to your stomach, as if testing dough, and nods with satisfaction. The gesture feels like a blessing and a claim at the same time. When the first kicks come, you gasp, startled, and the women laugh with approval. They tell you the baby is strong, that it moves because it knows its place is certain. You nod, pretending to share their excitement, but each flutter feels more like a reminder that your body no longer belongs to you. You pray quietly at night, whispering the same prayer you once said for rain or for forgiveness, though you aren't sure what you're asking for now. Sometimes you feel proud of the roundness beneath your sari. Sometimes you feel trapped inside it. As the months deepen, the air itself seems to thicken. Your legs swell, your back aches, and the scent of incense makes you ill. You're not allowed outside the house anymore. The courtyard becomes your whole world again, and even that feels too bright. The women begin to count the days aloud, each one a soft tally of expectation. They talk about names, about omens, about the signs that will tell them if the child is blessed. You listen, letting their words wash over you like a story told for someone else. When the time finally comes, it happens at night. The household wakes to the sound of your breathing breaking into gasps. The room fills with women, relatives, servants, a midwife whose face you barely see in the lamplight. They move quickly, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm older than memory. Someone burns camphor and the smoke coils around the low ceiling until the air tastes like metal and salt. The priest chants in the next room, his words muffled by the noise. They lay you on a mat spread with old sheets, still warm from the sun. The heat of the lamps and the smell of sweat press down on you. The midwife kneels between your legs and tells you to breathe. You try, but the air feels too thick. Pain surges through you, sudden and total, and the world narrows to sound and breath. Someone wipes your forehead. Someone else murmurs encouragement, but you can't tell whose hands they are. Each contraction feels like a wave that pulls you under, and when it passes, you lie stunned, waiting for the next one. Time dissolves. The chants become one long note that seems to stretch forever. You think of the courtyard outside, of the stars you used to trace through the lattice, of the night birds calling from the fields. You want to be anywhere but here, but the pain drags you back each time you drift away. Your vision blurs. The midwife's voice is firm now, telling you to push, to surrender, to let the body do what it was made for. You obey because there is nothing else left to do. The effort burns through you until it feels like the world is tearing open. You bite your lip to keep from screaming. When the child finally slips free, there is a moment of perfect stillness. The chanting stops, the fire crackles, and for a heartbeat the only sound is your ragged breathing. Then the baby cries, thin, sharp, impossible, and the women sigh in relief. The sound feels distant, as though it comes from another room. Someone lifts the baby, wipes it clean, and shows it to you. You see only motion, a blur of colour and light, before it is wrapped in cloth and carried to your mother-in-law. She laughs, high and triumphant, shouting blessings toward the ceiling. A son, she says, though you barely hear the word. The others echo it, a chorus of satisfaction. The midwife presses your shoulders down when you try to sit. She tells you to rest, to let the world come back slowly. She kneads your stomach, checking for bleeding, and her hands leave faint red marks that look like vines. You stare at the ceiling beams until they stop spinning. Someone brings you water. You drink greedily, the coolness shocking against your throat. Sweat runs into your eyes. The lamplight flickers, catching on the brass bowls, on the thin line of blood that stains the mat. Your son is placed beside you, a small bundle with a noise that sounds almost like breathing. His skin is soft and slippery, his eyes sealed. You're told to touch him, to claim him as your own, but your hands hover above him, trembling. You expect to feel something, joy, awe, love, but what comes instead is an emptiness so vast it frightens you. The women mistake your silence for exhaustion and nod approvingly. They say motherhood has made you serene. Outside, the drums begin. You recognize the rhythm from the wedding and the fertility feast, the same beat the village uses for every celebration. The priest's voice joins in, thanking the gods for their mercy. The sound seeps through the walls like smoke, filling every corner of the room. The women feed you milk, mixed with turmeric and sugar. It tastes thick and cloying. They tell you to sleep, that you've done well, that the pain is over. The noise of the drums keeps echoing in your head, steady and relentless. When you wake again, the lamps are gone, and dawn light seeps through the window. The room smells of ghee, sweat, and something sour beneath it. The women are already gone, their voices drifting faintly from the courtyard. You can hear the baby breathing beside you, small and rhythmic. You turn your head toward it, studying its tiny mouth, the soft, dark fuzz of its hair. For a moment, you feel a flicker of tenderness, thin as the first spark of a match. You reach out and touch its cheek. The skin is impossibly warm, and the weight of that warmth brings tears you don't understand. Your mother-in-law enters quietly, carrying a silver cup. She says the house will hold a ceremony soon, that you should be proud, that every woman in your line has fulfilled this duty. She places the cup beside the bed, filled with water from the temple. Drink, she says. You've joined the circle. You do because refusing would make no sense. The water tastes faintly of ashes. When she leaves, the room falls silent again. You look at your son, at your own hands resting on the sheet, and feel as though both belong to someone else. Outside, a rooster calls once, sharp against the morning. You close your eyes, listening to the slow breathing beside you, and understand that nothing will ever entirely belong to you again. Not your body, not your time, not even your thoughts. The child shifts in size, his tiny fist curling and uncurling. You place your hand lightly on its back, feeling the fragile rise and fall, and whisper a prayer you no longer believe in. Your son's breath warms your palm. Relief and dread blur together, until you can't tell them apart, and you lie there in the half-light, knowing you're part of the cycle now, and that the world will keep turning, whether you wish it to or not. Months pass in a blur of feeding and fatigue. Your son grows heavier in your arms, and your body learns to move again, slower but certain. You wake before dawn, as you do every day now. The house still sleeps, and the courtyard is wrapped in a pale blue mist that smells faintly of ash and wet stone. You move carefully through the stillness, your bare feet finding the cool patches on the floor. The brass lamps wait on the household altar, their wicks already curled from last night's smoke. You fill each bowl with ghee, steady your hand against the tremor of half-sleep, and whisper the morning mantras under your breath. The words rise and fall with the ease of breath itself. You don't need to think about them anymore. Your tongue knows the rhythm, your lips the pause between syllables. The sound feels like habit, and habit feels like safety. When the lamps catch, they burn with a soft hiss. You bow your head until your forehead touches the stone floor. The air is cool there, almost kind. You stay that way for a long moment, letting the world shrink to warmth and smoke, and the faint ringing in your ears. By the time you stand, your knees ache, but you no longer notice. Behind you, the house begins to stir. Doors sliding open, water being poured, footsteps moving toward the kitchen. The rhythm of life begins again, as reliable as sunrise. After the birth of your son, your days have become a sequence of rituals strung together like prayer beads. There is comfort in the repetition. You rise, light the lamps, bathe, feed the child, grind the spices, prepare offerings, serve the elders, sweep the floors, sleep, and start again. Each act is a small devotion, a way to fill the hours without thinking too deeply about them. The women praise you for your discipline, saying you have settled into your role well. You nod and smile, because that is easier than explaining that you no longer know where duty ends and faith begins. Your mother-in-law tells you that a good wife's prayers keep the household safe, so you pray for everything, for health, for rain, for the steady breath of your son as he sleeps beside you. You pray even when you no longer believe anyone is listening. The act itself is enough. There is peace in the movement of your lips, in the steady count of repetitions, in the way smoke curls upward and disappears. The gods may be silent, but silence can be soothing when it's predictable. Sometimes when the others are busy, you linger in the prayer room longer than you should. You run your fingers along the rim of the offering bowls, tracing the oily film left by years of devotion. The statues stare back at you, Vishnu with his serene smile, Lakshmi with her open palms, Parvati with eyes carved too large for her face. Their colours are fading now, dulled by dust and smoke. You wipe them gently with a damp cloth and feel a strange tenderness for their stillness. They have seen everything in this house, heard every whispered hope and broken promise, and they never flinch. You envy that. When your son cries, you take him with you into the temple corner and hold him close while you pray. His small body presses against yours, his heartbeat quick and sure. You whisper the same verses your mother once sang to you, though their meaning has grown slippery with time. You tell yourself that if you say them enough, they might become real again. The rhythm lulls him to sleep, and for a brief moment, the world feels almost gentle. Then he stirs, and the spell breaks. You return him to his cradle, the warmth of his breath still clinging to your arm. The priest visits sometimes, carrying new idols from the temple, or reading from the scriptures, while the family gathers to listen. You sit with the other women at the edge of the courtyard, eyes lowered, fingers clasped. The priest speaks of purity, of patience, of the divine rewards that await those who serve faithfully. His voice is smooth and practiced, rising on the word obedience, falling on duty. Everyone nods. You nod too, though you find yourself watching the way dust floats in the sunlight, rather than the movement of his lips. You think that dust might understand devotion better than anyone. It drifts where it's told, settles where it's needed, and vanishes quietly when swept away. At night, after the lamps are dimmed, you sometimes return to the prayer room alone. The air is thick with the scent of old flowers and burnt wicks. You light a single lamp and watch the flame sway, its glow stretching the god's shadows across the wall. You tell yourself you are there to give thanks for food, for your son's steady breathing, for another day without sickness. But the truth is simpler. You come for the silence. You come because it is the only place in the house where no one expects you to speak. You whisper words that mean nothing or everything, depending on the night. There are moments, small and sudden, when you catch yourself believing again. When your son laughs in his sleep, or when the morning light hits the brass bowls just right, a quiet joy flickers at the edge of your mind. You hold it carefully, afraid to break it. The joy doesn't last long, but it's enough to keep you lighting the lamps, enough to keep you bowing before the idols with steady hands. It's easier to pretend the gods are listening than to admit they never were. Sometimes you wonder if prayer itself is a kind of rebellion, to keep speaking into the silence, to keep hoping without reason. Perhaps that is the only freedom left to you. You imagine the gods hearing your voice among the thousands that rise every morning, a sound so small it might slip through their indifference. You imagine them turning toward it, if only for a moment. Then you open your eyes and see their painted faces staring back, frozen in expressions of perfect calm, and the thought fades into the air like smoke. The days pass, the rituals repeat, the lamps burn and are cleaned and burn again. You learn to move through them as smoothly as breath, one action flowing into the next. The others say your devotion brings peace to the household. You smile and let them believe it. Peace is a small word for something so heavy. Tonight, when you kneel before the altar, the light flickers unevenly, throwing shadows across the faces of the gods. You watch the oil tremble in the bowls and wonder if they feel the heat as you do. You whisper their names again and again until the sound loses meaning. The statues do not move, but the air around them seems to thicken. You stare at their painted eyes, so wide and unwavering, and a question rises in you before you can stop it. You lean forward slightly, the flame's warmth brushing your face, and whisper it under your breath. The gods do not answer. They never do. You study their faces, unmoving and eternal, and wonder if they ever blink. Years pass, stitched together by small ceremonies and the steady rhythm of prayer. Your son learns to walk, then to speak, and before you can mark the time, your body carries another life. The second birth comes easier, quieter. The women call it a blessing, though you barely remember the moment it happened. The child is a girl. She grows quickly, her laughter filling the same courtyard where you once sat stringing flowers. You tell yourself you're glad, even though part of you watches her, as if through water, distant, blurred, already fading into the same shape you once were. By the time she's old enough to run barefoot through the courtyard, your hands have grown accustomed to stillness. You sweep, cook, pray, and watch her gather marigolds, humming to herself under the morning sun. The tune she hums is one you recognize immediately. It is the same song the women once sang for you. You pause, feeling the air shift, and for a moment the courtyard tilts into memory. Your own small hand stained orange, your mother's shadow at the doorway, the scent of smoke and ghee in the air. You want to tell her to stop, but the melody is soft and her voice is so light that it seems to lift the dust rather than disturb it. So you let her sing, even though the sound tightens your throat. The house is busier than usual. Guests have arrived, distant relatives with polite smiles and voices full of calculation. You watch from the doorway as they sit with your husband and the priest, speaking in the careful tones of people performing good deeds. There are bowls of sweets on the table, their scent mingling with the smoke from the lamps. The air feels thick, almost familiar. You don't have to hear the words to understand. You have seen this scene before. Different faces, the same purpose. The men discuss lineage and omens. The women murmur about dowry and virtue. And someone says your daughter's name with approval, as if it were a fine piece of cloth passed down through generations. Your mother-in-law, growing elderly now, moves through the room with brisk authority, arranging trays and nodding at the guests. She is proud, and why wouldn't she be? The family will prosper again. The circle will hold. When she glances at you, her expression softens only slightly. You are no longer the girl who needed teaching, but neither are you free from her lessons. You return her nod and lower your gaze. The gesture so practiced, it feels like breathing. Your daughter doesn't understand yet. She still laughs too loudly, runs too quickly, forgets to pull her veil over her head when she enters a room. You watch her from across the courtyard, and every movement she makes feels like memory replayed. She asks why so many guests have come, why her father looks so serious, why you look so tired. You tell her it's a celebration, that people have come to bless her, that she must sit still and smile when the time comes. The words sound hollow even as you speak them, but she believes you, because children believe what mothers say, even when their eyes say something else. In the afternoon, the priest marks a space in the courtyard for the ceremony. The marigold chains your daughter made are hung along the pillars, their colour burning bright against the white walls. The guests gather again, fanning themselves against the heat. You sit beside your daughter as the priest begins to chant. His voice rises and falls with the same rhythm you remember from long ago, and you feel your body react before your mind can, your heart tightening, your breath catching, your palms growing damp. You look at your daughter, her face half hidden beneath her veil, her eyes wide with confusion. She doesn't yet know that this day will become the border between childhood and silence. The guests murmur approval as the ritual unfolds. Coins clink softly, prayers are whispered, and the air fills with the smell of sandalwood and sweat. Your husband nods at each word the priest says, his expression distant but satisfied. The other women look at you now and then, their glances gentle but knowing. They see not your pain but their own memories reflected back at them. The sound of chanting fills the courtyard, heavy and steady, and for a moment you feel as though you never left your own ceremony, as though you've been standing in this same place your entire life, watching the same knot being tied again and again. You think of speaking, of stopping it somehow, but the thought dissolves as quickly as it comes. What could you say that hasn't already been said? What could you change when even the gods have blessed this cycle? You remember your mother's face on your wedding day, the same strained smile, the same trembling hands, and you finally understand that silence was the only gift she had to give you. You sit very still, your fingers pressing against your daughter's arm through the thin fabric of her veil. She looks up at you once, her expression half curiosity, half trust, and you smile because you must. When the priest declares the match complete, the courtyard erupts in polite applause. Sweets are distributed, lamps are lit, blessings murmured over the noise. The marigolds your daughter strung this morning are already beginning to wilt in the heat, their petals curling inward, as though shy of what they've witnessed. You help her to her feet, smoothing her veil when it slips, and lead her toward the guests. The men smile at her. The women touch her hair and call her beautiful. She accepts it all, blinking in the brightness, unaware that beauty is another word for compliance. As evening falls, the priest chant fades into conversation, and the courtyard smells of ghee and dust. You sit beside your daughter for the final blessing. The light from the lamp softens her face, making her look younger, smaller, almost safe. You take her hand and feel her pulse, quick and fluttering. She squeezes your fingers, perhaps for comfort, perhaps for reassurance. You want to tell her to run, to hide, to hold on to the song she was singing this morning. But the words never come. Instead, you murmur that everything will be fine, and she believes you, because she still can. The ceremony ends as it began, with the sound of conch shells and laughter. Guests rise, bow to the priest, and scatter into the evening. Your daughter leans against you, drowsy from the noise and incense. You adjust her veil again, tucking it gently behind her ear. The courtyard empties slowly, leaving behind only the flicker of the lamps and the faint hum of the last prayer. You listen to the melody, the same one that once carried you away, and wonder how many generations have heard it without understanding what it means. When the priest finally closes his book, you rise with your daughter. Her hand is still in yours, soft and small. You look down at her and see yourself reflected in her expression. The same hesitant smile, the same uncertain eyes, the same waiting. The guests offer one last blessing as they depart, their voices echoing against the stone. You whisper a thank you don't mean. As the lamps sputter and the first stars appear above the courtyard, the priest begins to hum the final verse of the song you remember from your own childhood. You hum along softly, your lips forming the words out of habit. The sound drifts upward, mingling with the night air, and when your daughter turns to look at you, you smile faintly and squeeze her hand. The same song rises again, and the same echo answers it as the cycle begins once more. One summer, illness comes quietly, like a visitor who has been expected but not invited. It begins with heat that lingers in your chest and a cough that catches in your throat when you speak too long. You think it will pass the way all small ailments do, but each morning you wake more tired than the one before. The air itself feels heavier, the light too bright, the sounds of the courtyard too sharp. When you rise to sweep, your hands tremble. The broom feels heavier than it once did. You pause more often now, resting against the wall until the dizziness fades. The others notice but say little. They tell you to sit in the shade, to drink warm milk, to let the younger women manage the work. You nod and obey, though the stillness feels like punishment. The house continues as if nothing has changed. Your husband still leaves each morning to oversee the fields. Your mother-in-law still prays at the same hour, her voice steady and measured. Your son, now old enough to walk beside his father, carries himself with a seriousness that makes you proud and a little afraid. Your daughter plays in the courtyard with her dolls, humming the same songs you once sang to her. Their lives move around you, unbroken, while you seem to have slowed to a different rhythm, one that measures time in breaths rather than days. At night, you lie awake, listening to the sounds of the house, the rustle of cloth, the creak of wooden beams, the faint hiss of the lamp's wick. Your breathing fills the silence between them. You remember when those sounds once comforted you, the proof that life continued beyond your room. Now they make you restless. You feel yourself drifting away from them, as though you're standing just outside the doorway, watching the world carry on without you. The doctor comes once, summoned more out of duty than hope. He feels your pulse, peers into your eyes, and tells your husband what you already know. The fever will either pass or it will not. He leaves behind a pouch of bitter herbs and a few murmured blessings. The women brew the herbs into tea and press the cup to your lips. You drink it because refusal would be rude. The taste is sharp, earthy, and it stays with you long after the cup is empty. Days stretch thin. You move from your bed to the window and back again. The world outside the lattice glows white with heat. You can smell the dust baking in the courtyard, the faint sweetness of the drying marigolds, the acrid smoke from the cooking fire. Your daughter brings you water and sits beside you, plaiting her hair. She talks about small things, how her brother caught a lizard, how the neighbour's cow has given birth, and you listen without answering. Her voice is the only sound that doesn't make you ache. When she leaves, the room feels too wide, the silence too deep. You begin to dream of water, rivers that stretch forever, wells that have no bottom, rain that never stops. You wake each time with your lips dry and your throat raw, the taste of dust on your tongue. The fever blurs the edges of the days until they no longer separate. Sometimes you hear voices outside your door and cannot tell if they're real. You think of the gods' painted faces in the prayer room, how they always watched without blinking. You wonder if they see you now, or if they have already turned their gaze to someone else. The priest visits in the evenings. He sits near your bed, the scent of sandalwood clinging to his robes, and recites verses from the scriptures. The words drift through the room like smoke. You try to follow them, but your mind slips away, caught on small details. the way the light trembles on the wall, the crack in the clay bowl by your bed, the sound of your own breath hitching between syllables. The priest tells you to think of the gods, to surrender yourself to their will. You smile faintly. Surrender is the only thing you've ever been allowed to practice. Your husband stands at the foot of your bed, his hands clasped behind his back. He looks older than you remember, his hair threaded with grey, his eyes careful. When he speaks, his words are gentle and distant, as though he's addressing the air rather than you. He tells you to rest, to think of the children, to leave worry behind. You nod because it comforts him. When he steps closer and places his hand on your shoulder, you feel the weight of familiarity, not love. It's a touch meant to fulfill a ritual, the gesture of a man who has done what is expected. You turn away so you don't have to see him pretending to grieve before you're gone. The fever deepens and time becomes slippery. Some days the room is bright and full of sound. Other days it shrinks to nothing but darkness and the whisper of your own heartbeat. You lose track of prayers, of meals, of names. The lamps are lit and extinguished without your noticing. Your daughter comes and goes like a shadow, your son now taller than you remembered. Your mother-in-law watching from the doorway with the same expression she wore the day you first arrived. One afternoon, you wake to find the air still and heavy. Even the flies have disappeared. The light from the window has turned soft and gold. You realise you can no longer hear the house. No footsteps, no voices, no laughter. Only your breath, faint and uneven. You turn your head toward the window, searching for the sky, but the lattice blurs and fades. You think of your daughter's hands, the marigolds, the endless rhythm of lives repeating beyond your own. A strange calm settles over you, gentle as dusk. The priest returns when the news spreads that you're fading. He sits beside you again, his voice steady, reciting the final prayers. The words fall like water over stone, washing away what little remains of you. Your husband kneels near your feet, his head bowed. You hear him weep quietly, politely, the way men do when they're watched. You feel neither comfort nor sorrow, only relief that the waiting is ending. The priest places a drop of holy water on your tongue and whispers a blessing. The room smells of smoke and flowers. Somewhere beyond the door, a child laughs, and the sound feels impossibly far away. Your last breath comes like a sigh. The priest continues his chant until the air grows still again. The women outside begin to move, their footsteps soft and quick, carrying the news through the courtyard. Your husband straightens his back, wipes his face, and calls for the lamps to be relit. The servants hurry to obey. Soon the house glows again, with steady light, as though nothing has changed. The priest instructs them to keep the flames burning through the night, a mark of passage, a promise of purity restored. The incense burns low, its smoke curling toward the ceiling, and before your body cools, the prayers begin anew. Time dissolves as softly as dust settling after a storm. The years stretch into centuries, and the house that once held you fades, rebuilt and repainted until even its foundations forget your footsteps. The courtyard fills with new voices, new laughter, new tears. The lamps are still lit each dawn, and the same mantras hum through the air, their syllables worn smooth by repetition. The gods' painted faces have been retouched 100 times, yet their eyes remain the same. Unblinking, serene, watching generation after generation bow in the same rhythm. The prayers have outlived their speakers. The rituals have outlasted their meanings. Your story becomes one among thousands, indistinguishable from the rest. The pattern repeats because repetition feels like order, and order feels like virtue. Daughters are still dressed in red, their hands painted with turmeric, their names whispered between bargains and blessings. Mothers still smile through tears, convincing themselves it is fate. Men still bow to priests who promise purity in exchange for obedience. Each life follows the same curve. Promise, endurance, silence, disappearance. It is a system so old that no one remembers it was built, only that it has always been there. The poets call it devotion. The priests call it harmony. The people call it tradition. And in the spaces between those words, the truth disappears. What was once flesh becomes story. What was once suffering becomes ceremony. The same songs echo through time. Their meanings changed only by who dares to listen. The colours remain vivid. Saffron, vermilion, gold. But their brightness conceals the dull ache beneath. Beauty becomes the camouflage of cruelty, a softness draped over generations of quiet surrender. If anyone remembers you, it is only through the rituals you performed, the lamps you lit, the prayers you whispered, the children you bore who learned to follow the same path. Your name has long been lost, washed away by the repetition of all the others. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.